Today I'm going to be reassembling the Valvetrain on my 7M GTE. So I took it back apart after getting it from the machine shop because it had some high spots on some of the cam journals, which I didn't like. You can kind of see them right here. So I took some 600 grit and knocked them down, and then I wanted to make sure to get the head good and clean again to get that grit out of there. Also had some damage to where the front cam seal sits, so you can kind of see it right there. Somebody had used an oversized socket and chewed it up until it was eating up the cam seal every time I went to put it in. You can kind of see that flapper right there. So knocked those down, sanded them smooth, and then when I cleaned it, I decided to take all the valve stem seals out because I didn't want the brake parts cleaner to tear those up. I'm kind of glad I did because a lot of them were put in kind of chewed up by the machine shop. These are also some cheap Chinese ones, so I got some OEM equivalents and we're going to be putting those in today. You'll need a tool like this to put in the valve stem seals. So I got this off Amazon. It was like 25 or 30 bucks. Not super high quality, but it gets the job done. Comes with like a driver and then several different tips. The 5.5 is what worked for this car. The 6 kind of fit but seemed a little tight. And it also comes with a puller, which you'll need when you remove them. Got about 8 in so far. My process has been to hit them with a little bit of oil and then rub that around with my pinky. And then I've been using the magnet to sit them on the guide because I think that's part of why the first ones got chewed up a little bit. So I'll just lightly touch them on my finger, get them kind of sitting in place. Push it down a little bit. I don't think you can see that. Yeah, and once it's sitting on there, what I do is I dip the tool in a little bit of oil and slide it in. Push that down. You can also give it a little tap if you want to make sure it's well seated, and then crank that out 24 more times. Working on installing the valves now. To put them in, what you're going to need is a tool like this. It's Lyle, and it is a keeper and removal tool. So what I've been doing to not get ahead of myself is I've just been doing them 2 at a time. That way I don't end up mixing up something I don't need to. What I do is I'm taking the valve stem, lubricating it with a little bit of oil, and then sliding it up inside the head. Same thing for the second one. Rub that in a little bit. All right, and then when I go to flip this back over, I'm gonna make sure that this towel is wadded up real tight there at that cylinder, and that'll hold the valves in place as I push down on them. All right, so each valve on the bottom, you put this washer looking thing. Just drop it down in there. And then next goes the spring. Been just getting a little bit of oil on the bottom of those. Make sure that sits down in there. And then next up is the keeper, the 2 little halves. So I've been just going ahead and setting those in there like so. And then I set those on top of the valve. I'm putting a little bit of oil on there as well to help things move as they slide into place. Then you take your tool. See if I can do this with one hand. You just push down and the film lock into place, and then it's on there. And then once again, you got to do that 24 more times. On the contrary of what I just said, those are not actually on there. I'll get down here and see if you can see it. See how this one, the valve stem is actually above the retainer? That is not the case for all the other ones. I realized that after a while. I was like, oh, I haven't been pushing these down hard enough to get them to lock in place. So yeah, be sure that you actually get it to seat down in place and not just like halfway on like all these are. So I'm gonna have to go back through and push a little harder. It seemed way too easy. Just wasn't putting enough force onto them to get them down to where they needed to go. Got all the keepers pressed down in place. Ended up actually putting the head on the ground. This workbench is about 48 inches tall and didn't have a lot of leverage to push down on. Picking it back up, I realized that it was, the valves were kind of grabbing the rag that I was using, and when they close, they'd rip off some threads from it. So what I'm going to do is I'll put the cams back in and I'll rotate them and make sure I go through each set of valves, intake and exhaust, and blow and get all that little bit of fuzzy out of there to make sure it doesn't end up in the engine when I start it up. All that's left is the easy stuff now. Just go through and put each shim and bucket back in the place that they belong. I had a lot more trouble than I would have expected putting in the shims and buckets. So kind of a recap of what went on. You kind of saw me struggling with that one. It just didn't want to slide in. I think there was two causes for that. One is that when I use this to pull, it kind of comes in an uncontrolled manner when the valve stem seal lets loose. I don't know if that'll focus, but you can kind of see that I put tape around these to help protect against that, but there's also some paint off the edge. So I think on some of the buckets or on some of the like cylinders, I had nicked those and created some little burrs. I had about 6 out of the 24 that did not want to slide in very smoothly. Some of them even got stuck, and I had to take my time working it back and forth with this plastic dowel. So I just would hit it left and right, just kind of rotating it until it clearanced itself, and then I could pull it out with a big magnet. And the other thing that I think caused that is I had used quite a bit of brake parts cleaner to clean this out, and just lubricating the bucket itself was not enough. I had a lot better success once I did get them out and went ahead and coated the walls as well. They slid in, and now they all rotate freely like they should. None of them were tight. But yeah, that took a lot more time than I would have ever expected. That's what I get for saying now it's just the easy part. Just a little recap. Be careful when you're putting the valve stem seals back in. As you can see here, over half of those were kind of torn and had those fray edges. Those are the ones that the machine shop put in. They also left remnants of the original stem seals sitting around the base of each guide, so I pulled that out as well. Not super impressed with that, but I ordered the OEM equivalents from Drift Motion. It's about $60-ish. I might be able to find them cheaper now that I have this part number, so maybe that helps someone else in the future. Next on this kit, I'll go ahead and put the part number in the description. Like I said, 5.5 is what worked. I would recommend using some stronger tape to protect the edges to keep from chewing up where the buckets and shims go into place. In hindsight, I should have hit each of those with some really high grit paper, and I probably wouldn't have had that issue at all just from where that scraped it a little bit going in. The other item that I conclude is this worked really well. Wish I had went ahead and bought one of those. It's like a rubber cup thing that goes up in the cylinders. I've seen it in a couple other videos and forum posts. I'll see if I can find a part number, but I should just went ahead and bought one of those too. But I appreciate you all for watching me put the Valvetrain back together on this 7M. Hope this helps someone. Thank you.